Hey team, welcome to episode 18 of the First Do No Harm podcast. Today we're talking to Kait Cruz from Hn'H Santuary and the Purposeful Cowgirl about her journey with her horse ownership and how she unraveled some big emotional and physical traumas in her horses that has led to her starting her animal sanctuary. Do you want to start off with introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about that journey?
Yeah, well, thank you for already the awesome intro. It's a blessing to be on this podcast with you and being able to talk. As you said, I am Kait. I own a 501c3 nonprofit sanctuary that rescues and rehabilitates horses. Right now, we're still in the tiny sanctuary phase, but the mission's big and the goal's even bigger. And I do also run Purposeful Cowgirl, which is all about teaching about intention and fulfillment surrounding your purpose in life. So that's just a little bit about me.
Yeah, amazing. So did you want to tell us about, that kind of founding story that led you towards developing your little sanctuary?
Absolutely. So I was probably around 18 when everything in my life began to switch. I'd always kind of known I was a little different. I've always been the awkward, quirky kid growing up. Um, but I also went to an all-girl Catholic school, so I didn't realize how odd and quirky I was until I hit college. So I had no idea what I was doing. I had no direction and was just, starting to get those preconceived notions of you have to have everything figured out once you hit those upper levels of school. So I was just kind of riding the wave, and reality hit when my grandfather fell ill with cancer. It was his second bout of cancer, but this time it was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So we weren't sure what was going to happen, but I dropped everything. I dropped out of school. I tried to spend as much time with him as I possibly could. And unfortunately, he ended up passing away pretty suddenly and tragically. And it was in front of me and basically the rest of my family. So that traumatic incident exposed a whole bunch of trauma that I hadn't been dealing with. I was sexually assaulted as a high schooler, and I had also dealt with a bunch of abuse and anxiety that was really latent, and all of that came up. And so, amongst all the grieving, I was just falling apart with mental health. And one day I just said, I'm going to get a horse. And my family's like, what are you talking about? Your grandfather just died. We have so much going on. What are you doing? And my grandfather and I had a special bond. He was a cowboy. And I just got back into horses at age 18. And by the time he had fallen ill and passed away, it was just our bonding connection again. And I was convinced I was going to go to Canada, buy a horse, transport it back to America, and I was going to become a Grand Prix rider. And that was the goal at the time. And a friend of a friend reached out to my mom and said, hey, there's this little Andalusian thoroughbred cross that needs a home. She's going to be, 6-horse on a 5-horse trailer going across the country. So she's probably going to end up dying. So if you want to take a look at her, you can. And I was like, I don't want to. I want my fancy horse that I picked out. And of course I was convinced. So I went and grumpily saw this feral little horse that was a year and 3 months, skinny, bloated, emaciated, so ill. And I was like, fine, I'll take it. That was Autumn, who I've now had for 5 years. She got home and I bawled. I said, she's home and I love her already. She's never going to go anywhere. And she started this launching pad of figuring out horsemanship from being a feral horse and me have no idea what I was doing with a yearling. So she catapulted Hn'H Sanctuary on accident.
Is that one of the horses that you sent through with your photos?
Yes, so she's the big, like, coppery bay one.
Yeah, she's so beautiful.
Thanks.
So one of the things that I have heard you say is It's okay to not be okay. That's why you got a horse.
Yep. Yeah.
So did you want to talk about a little bit, where you talk about the reflection of our emotional dysregulation in our horses and how you've like kind of unpacked that experience several times over now?
Yeah.
in different ways with your different horses that have come to you?
Yeah, I'll start with Little Miss Autumn. So, when I was going through my grieving process, I was notorious for actually saying that I hated people. Since, trauma happened as a high schooler, I was like, I hate people. I just don't know what to do with them. I just hate everything. And that was my go to motto, which is really unfortunate looking back. But I hadn't dealt with a lot of trauma. And with Autumn, she hated people too. She didn't want to trust me. She was just really scared. And to be honest, I recognized that fear of my life was changing, her life was changing. Obviously, I was really ill mentally, and she was really ill physically. So while she was recovering and I was recovering, we slowly started to blend together. But that was not without rough patches. She sent me to the hospital a few times. She almost died. The vets, when they came out, thought she was going to die and didn't want to let me know. And our journey just carried on, trying to figure each other out and trying to figure out what communication meant. So she had never been handled before. She was raised by another baby, so she wasn't mannered by another mare or by a herd. So with me, I was not scary. I was not anything that should have been feared. She's like, I can just run you over. I can drag you. It's okay. And for me, I was like, this is not okay at all. But just her surroundings were scary. The lack of stability for her was terrifying. And that fear basis ended up becoming the foundation of our relationship, trying to figure out how to make her feel comfortable, how to communicate and let her know that this isn't going to be scary, this is going to be fine, and really exercising patience. I tried traditional horsemanship with her, and if she could have scoffed in my face, she would have. So I just learned how to be really gentle and patient, not only with her, but with myself on the days that I wasn't 100% and she wasn't. And she ended up laying out the outline of how I started the rest of the horses that I've been working with, basically just one day at a time. And every inch is progress versus every step forward. Then I ended up getting Norman. And at that point, I've had Autumn for about a year and a half at that point, and I had worked through most of the scared, angry parts of grief, but I hadn't really dealt with my own PTSD or the anxiety that I had been dealing with. And when I got Norman, that was the instant thing that I saw. When I met him, he was super calm. He had been sitting in a field for a few months, hadn't been ridden. It's debatable on whether or not he was under some sort of substance or if he was just really comfortable at that place. By the time he got home to me, he was a completely different animal. Couldn't touch him, went to go halter him. He backed away, ran into a corner, started shaking. I couldn't pick up his feet. He went dead lame. If it could have happened with him, it basically did. But at the end of the day, I looked at him and was like, when he's scared, he's going blind. Like, he's not recognizing anything that's going on around him. His fight or flight is complete flight. And it was terrifying with him being so large. And I just was able to immediately recognize that that's PTSD and anxiety manifesting. So I have to retrain how he's viewing everything. And I need to reassociate those scary moments or those fearful moments or those moments where he feels like he's going to be attacked and integrate in peaceful, calm moments. And so he ended up really drilling into me the positive reinforcement stuff, even more so than Autumn. Autumn, I could be loud and boisterous and run around with her and have fun with. But with him, I had to be calm, collected, really minute movements, and really gentle voices. Otherwise, it was an explosion of whatever Norman was going through at that moment.
Yeah.
And then a few months later, I ended up getting a Lila. And I remember calling the other sanctuary, because at that point I was like, okay, I'm basically taking in broken horses. I might as well continue to do so. And I didn't necessarily want to, but I was like, I can get a little mini from a kill pen, and she will just be Autumn's buddy when I take Norman out for walks, because she used to scream hysterically every time I left. And another nonprofit said, absolutely, we have the sweetest little mini. We love her to death, but you can have her a part of your sanctuary because she's too big. She's being picked on. And I said, okay. And I had Bob, our guy that got both of the horses home and has been my trailer guy. He's like, so she's a special one. You're going to have fun with her, but I'm really glad that she's going to you out of anyone. And I had no idea what that meant until she got off the trailer. And she was the angriest thing I'd ever laid eyes on. I joked and said that she was pissing fire, and she literally was. And that was the first time I had experienced anger out of a horse. Instead of the flight, I was meeting full-blown fight, and she tried to take everybody out. She went after the big horses. She went after me. She went after the vets. And that was the first time I had to go, okay, I have to now restructure to, this isn't scary, but this is not going to murder you. And we're going to process this slowly in bite-sized pieces.
Yeah.
So with Lila, she was probably my hardest. I remember sitting days on the floor of her stall just crying and not knowing what to do with her. But I just knew that if I was able to love Autumn the way that she was and Norman the way that he was, I was going to learn how to love her the way that she was. So all three of them basically showed me different sections of myself. So Autumn with the fear and lack of foundation to build off of, Norman with the PTSD and anxiety, and then Lila with, maybe some residual anger that I hadn't dealt with, but mainly just the untrust. I had no trust in humanity at that point. I was untrusting of myself. And so to have Lila really throw that in my face every day, every second possible, was unnerving. But all three of them definitely highlighted, emotional aspects of myself, but it made it all the more relatable for me to meet them where they were. So
yeah, I like that the lesson that you kind of were going through with Lila, where this horse doesn't have to like me. I just have to be a good example of what love looks like.
Yes. And I think that I always try to exemplify myself that way with them, just showing up every day as the best possible version of myself, and showing them that, like, all humans aren't bad. I swear to goodness. And I think during that, I had to learn for myself, okay, all humans aren't bad. I'm preaching it to the horses. I have to learn to take care of that issue myself. So yeah, that was really the main goal that I had with them, was just going, it's not all bad. Someone's going to care for you. And if that someone's only going to be me, then it's only going to be me.
Yeah. I think that's probably the hardest thing that I find with, like, training, especially if you're training other people's horses, is like instilling that sense of stability and security in their life when you don't actually know what's going to happen to them.
Yeah.
So it's good that, you can say, no, you're here. Like, this is it. Like, the end of the line for you. We're going to live out our lives in harmony. Now, come on with the harmony.
Yeah. And it's funny too, because with Autumn, when I originally got her, I thought, okay, she'll be a project.
Yeah.
I can save her from the situation and I'll feel real good about it. And I'll be able to give her to a home that will, tolerate, if not adore her. Right. Yeah. I did not have that mindset of, this is now a life that I'm responsible for.
Yeah.
And yeah, with all three of them, At some point I was like, maybe they could be a show horse, or maybe they could do this. And Autumn probably has like the most opportunity to do anything in the show world, but it's not a priority or a necessity for our relationship whatsoever.
Yeah.
But all three of them, I looked at them and went, okay, so it's been 5 years. Y'all are definitely not going anywhere. You're going to stay put right here with me and nothing will ever happen.
Yeah.
Which was a total 180 from where I was before. I was like breeding and, I'm going to retrain and I'm going to have a huge show barn I'm going to have a sanctuary and I'm going to protect the ones that other people don't know what to do with.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. That's how my projects tend to go as well.
Yeah. I feel like we just have soft hearts. The bird's like,
Yeah.
okay, we'll bring you in, we'll love you, and we'll stick with you.
Well, that's like, you can't train out bad experiences
Yeah.
for the horses. And so if you're gonna have that breakthrough with them, you have to offer your heart.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna offer your heart, it becomes really hard to then let go.
Yes, I agree. I think it's a beautiful sentiment though to walk into any type of training situation or horse ownership, just recognizing that your heart might get broken in the process. Whether that's not being able to have those breakthrough moments in the way that we had anticipated, or having those breakthrough moments and then handing them back to someone else. I've recently just started getting back into training other people's horses. So it's definitely a weird feeling to be like, I've built this beautiful relationship with you, but here's the person that's going to continue to love you. And I think it's just important to bring that same heart to the people that we're, also helping to heal and train in the process of training their horse.
Yeah. I definitely find now, like, the horses behave better for their owners than me now. So it used to be they behave better for me than the owners, and they'd be like, what is this magic? And now that I'm like, well, build a relationship with them, and so I'm only there once a week, and they're with their horses every day working on that relationship now. I'm like,
it's good.
You do it.
Well, I think that's beautiful because I think often, especially with training, people bring broken horses, but they don't realize that they're also broken themselves, especially if they're not walking into that space with kind of the mindset that was forced to, because either I was going to basically die at the hands of one of these horses or I was going to change the way that I functioned. A lot of people aren't brought up with that thought process when they get into horses. So I think that's just really awesome to have a foundation like that and to be able to meet a partnership where it's at and then help them push forward versus taking it on yourself only and then having to go, well, let's try to fix you too. I think it's really cool that you do it that way.
Yeah, and it is a challenge. Like, I don't like to be, you know what, my horse's problem is me. I like to be, my horse's problem is its previous experiences.
Yeah.
And I get that out of them. But I've had the same experience with having horses that are very much like, no, you sort your problems out and then we'll try and meet in the middle.
Yes. I think those are my favorite to work with.
Yeah, me too. The difficult ones.
Yeah.
So what you've been talking about is when you learn how to heal the horse, you learn how to heal yourself. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah, I think just going through the motions with a horse, like whether it was any of the three of them, right? Obviously, as we've covered, I wasn't in the best posture heart-wise walking into this journey. And I think it obviously happened for a reason because I wouldn't be as fulfilled or as happy as I am now. But if you had met me, it'd be it's 5 years ago this year that we lost my grandfather. I was a completely different person. And the self-healing that I had with them every day, just coming and meeting them where they were, taking things as slow as possible, I felt like the horses did the same thing for me. So
Yeah.
when I started really investing myself into training and realizing that this is probably what I'm going to do for the rest of my life, I was able to break down the barriers within myself and go, okay, when I'm walking into this space, how am I feeling before I even get my hands on a horse? Or to be able to read the animals and go, okay, buddy, like, how are you feeling today? Your eyes are a little big. The way that you're carrying yourself is telling you're a little spooky. Or if the girls are like cuddly, are they wanting to come up to me? Just having that relationship foundation really was the eye opener into seeing all those nuanced behaviors that I had never noticed in horses before. I always kind of felt it. I always kind of knew walking into it. But with them, it was the difference between making progress or possibly getting one of us hurt. And I think the severity of those moments, the reality of like, this can go one of two ways, and I have the opportunity to prevent or allow something to happen, just really dictated every single moment. And don't get me wrong, I was not a perfect person walking into this. There were plenty of training sessions where there would be a big fume of rage that would come out of nowhere, and I had to go, do not take this out on a horse. Like, stop the moment that you're about to have and breathe for a second. Yeah, so I feel like healing with them just was incremental, and at the same time is incremental for me. And I'm a totally different person, and all three of the horses are completely different too. Like, I can now kiss Lila, which never would have happened before. Autumn is, the most wonderful, sensitive mare. She's just like, honestly, the biggest sweetie pie that I've ever met. And before I was like, you terrify me. And then Norman's just a really big puppy dog. So I think walking through that with them just built a partnership that, one, I can never let go of, but two, I don't think that they would have progressed any other way. That foundation of kindness and compassion, empathy, and also looking at myself in the process and making sure that I was giving myself that same grace, just all around healed us together. So is a really cool journey that we're on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's it's a big process, right? And
Yeah.
it's painful.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that I'm always like a little bit wary of when I'm talking about. So one of our exercises that we do with our students with their horses is being able to like get quiet and still with the horses and wait until they relax, and you start seeing those relaxation cues, and then trying to build that connection from there.
Yeah.
But I think like for a lot of people, you stay busy so that you don't have to feel. So that moment of quiet is where it can like hit you, and it can like really flood you.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like what we're running from on the daily. So it's like that resistance to being quiet and doing nothing with our horse is a lot more to do with us not being ready to handle that healing that has to come, because it's so painful first. Were your horses your guide on that process, or did you have somebody else helping you?
I had no one else. I'm a huge advocate of like going to therapy and all of those things, like getting the mental health care that you need. Unfortunately, I really couldn't afford it after a while.
You had 3 horses.
Yeah, accidentally getting 3 horses will kind of do that. Wasn't the total rational thing to do, considering it was just me, but my family was also going through those same grieving processes. And we had already made a deal when I was 18 that financially they weren't going to do anything with the horses because they never wanted me to ride. It's been a big, painful thing for a few generations with horses. So I didn't really have anyone walking specifically the horse journey with me. And my family was already going through healing. So we were all kind of emotionally growing ourselves. So it was just kind of me and the horses. I feel like we were each other's guides pretty mutually. That those painful moments that we were talking about and how we have to really get still before we can get forward on those. I felt like most days the horses were basically doing a wellness check on me. They'd stick their heads out and be like, hey, how you doing today?
Yeah.
Before I would even take that breath to be like, okay, how are you guys doing? So I think that for us, it was really mutual. And we all just kind of were able to figure out each other's nuances and, you know, the breath in the situation. How much are we holding versus how much are we giving? And now it's just a constant flow of breathing. But there are plenty of days where all of us were just like uptight, not breathing at all, looking at each other going, all right, what's going to happen here? But I think the moment I put my pride aside with them and said, all right, like if today's just turning out and me sitting in the sand with you, what is that going to look like? And going basically backwards some days. Yeah. But I think they taught me just as much as I've had to teach them that things weren't going to be bad. They've had to teach me that those small moments are everything. So I think it's pretty mutual guidance.
Yeah. My moment was, all right, if it's just going to be me sitting on the other side of the fence of you while you eat, then that's our best effort for the day.
Yep. I remember with Lila specifically, I would sit in her stall and so she would just go outside and stare at me, just like side-eyeing me from the outside. And I remember I cried so hard when she came up and sniffed me. I was like, this is such a big moment. She wants to be in my space.
Yeah.
But yeah, I totally resonate with that. I think each one of them, Autumn, the first time that she didn't wail eye at me when I went to go pet her. Lila, the first time she chose to be in that space with me, even just recently, I had her for almost 4 years. And I saw her laying down for the first time in her space. She let me go in with her. I cried. I was like, are you really letting me come in while you're napping right now?
Yeah.
And Norman, first time I was able to halter him, even though it was modified, I bawled. It's just, you know, those little moments. I think people undervalue the fact that horses don't have to love us at all. They don't have to let us into their space. But when they allow just even the smallest entry point, not to run, but like to savor that moment, it becomes more powerful in the training process to be able to go, wow, that little bit is everything today. We're done for the moment. This is perfect.
Yeah, I know that feeling. So you talked a little bit about natural horsemanship maybe not being quite so effective with the horses. Dawn has just said she knows that feeling too.
Oh, I love that.
That natural horsemanship probably wasn't the best choice for these horses that have experienced those traumatic starts and whatnot, and how it pushed you into positive reinforcement realm.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that one?
Yeah. So I had YouTube University in my back pocket while I was trying to figure out Autumn. I had trainers that were basically like, you can just force your way into trusting. Like you can force your way into developing that relationship. And as someone that was sexually assaulted, it never sat well with me to force what I wanted onto them. And I think that was a really big trigger point for me too, was just seeing the fear and the chaos that happened with them if I did try, like specifically with Autumn and Norman. By the time I got to Lila, I was like, all positive reinforcement. This is all I've got, guys. But with Autumn, it was just not understanding. And then with Norman, just so fearful. with Autumn, I mean, I could use that body language that a lot of natural reinforcement people talk about, like being able to, you know, push energy in a very specific manner, like a little bit more of the dominance theory stuff. We got steps forward kind of with that, but ultimately it made her more resentful.
Yeah.
And it really got this kind of like fire in her that I didn't like, because she was salty. She was young. She was, you know, probably 2-ish when I started to realize like 100% positive reinforcement's the way that we're going to go. But for those first 9 months, I was just trying bits and pieces, trying to figure it out. And it wasn't until I took a step back and realized, when is she the most progressive with me? And it was when we would go on walks together around this huge property, and I would just walk over something and she'd be like, oh, okay, I can do that.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, sassy pants, you can do that. That's fine. And we started to conquer all of these little obstacles together, but with me guiding her into that situation, with me stepping first. And I started to realize, okay, me running up behind her or me trying to push her into that moment never worked. And so by the time she was 2, I was like, yep, if I can hand walk her into a situation, like not so literally, but, you know, more emotionally, if I could help her into that in a way that made her feel like she did it herself, but also looked at me first to do it, that was a huge turning point specifically with Autumn. Granted, I can like frolic around her and I can still use that energy stuff with her. Like if I hold my breath and relax my body, she immediately stops. Like that's the kind of horse that she is. And I can, you know, jog around her and have fun, and she'll like go cantering, and like she understands that stuff, because she didn't necessarily have the abuse trauma. She had the neglect trauma, even though that's a form of abuse. She just didn't understand. So bridging that gap was definitely more like, all right, here's what I'm doing. Can you do that too? And she's like, yes. And I get scratches and treats for it. So I will definitely do this. Whatever you ask, Mom, I've got it. And so she, you know, by well into her 2s was already confident and comfortable with anything that I was asking a 5-year-old doing traditional training. And with her, she was just offering it. She was willing. She was excited about it. There was no hostility. And so I think the difference between me trying to push her into those situations, more like what you see traditionally on YouTube for what natural horsemanship is very dominance theory focused. Just the progression versus me trying to do dominance theory versus me doing positive reinforcement was leaps and bounds with her. But Norman, there was no option. If I gave too much go to him with my body language, if I, you know, took one too many strong steps toward him, that horse was gone. He was blind, running around in a circle. He's like, I'm a racehorse again, Mama. I got this. I can keep going all day long for you. And there was no, you know, taking an inch. He took a mile. Yeah. So I had to really quiet myself. Even like the prancy stuff, I can do that with him now. Like now he understands like my body language is strictly a tool. Like it doesn't mean that anything's going to happen to him. But with Norman, it really took me being quiet, giving him his options, really readjusting his thought process, and giving him those literal rewards was the difference between am I doing what's right or am I doing what's wrong? Because he's a total people pleaser. He will do everything in his power and overexert himself in order to do what he thinks that you want. So having those clear-cut communications with him was essential for building the foundation. Now I can, you know, goof around and like he gets it and he knows nothing's going to happen. But if I didn't have those clear-cut boundaries and communications to begin with, there was no way that I could, you know, use my energy to like push him, because like I said, I gave him an inch of energy and he took a whole mile and would be gone into the next arena. So it was definitely a really big difference for them.
Yeah. Did you have a similar experience with Leela?
Yeah.
I always find, we hear so much in, the horse industry, like, there's no such thing as an aggressive horse, like, and then, and then you get to meet one and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
there's a handful.
Yeah. At that point, with Norman, it was instant. I knew from basically out the gate how I was going to have to treat him, because first lunging session, the first week I had him, I was like, this horse is going to explode and run through a gate. Like, this is just dangerous. So I knew immediately, thankfully, that I'd already worked with Autumn in that way. I knew exactly which direction I was going to go by the time we got to Lila. So I adopted Norman and Lila a month between each other. So with her, I don't think I could have done anything. She has a rearing and striking problem. So any form of pressure, she's up and out. So she'll, even now with the vet, and this is 4 years in the making, I have to do her injections for her. I have to do her blood draws, because that will get into her face a little too much, or, those trust issues of I don't know you pop up, and she will go right up on her hind legs and start pawing and nipping. So I understand that all of it's fear-based. There's no actual animosity per se. It's not like she's walking around with a vendetta wanting to kill people, but it's definitely an aggressive reaction with her. So with Lila, it's funny. She didn't want treats. She didn't want me to touch her. So with her, it was just leaving her alone was her reward. So it was kind of opposite of what I was expecting. But with her, there was no pressure. So I would just walk, and if she walked, congratulations. I didn't look at her for 5 seconds, and we sat there, and she probably ate something on the floor. That was enough for her.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, definitely modified. It wasn't the traditional, popping on a clicker. She hates the clicker. She doesn't like the sound.
Yeah.
And it definitely wasn't like treats or scratches. It was just more like modifying those same principles of she's choosing to be in that situation because I have showed her what X means. So how do we get from, X to Y, basically. But with Lila, I think that I guess how I started with her was basically when she would offer something, whether that was being close to me, I would make sure I was as relaxed as possible, and I always use really soft, good girl voices. And she started to realize, okay, this chick gets really nice, and gets kind of weird when I'm around. Okay, I'm okay with this, and then she'd kind of get more comfortable, and then she began to realize when I was teaching her how to lead or halter, I would be completely still and freeze, and she would decide whether or not she wanted to put her face into something or take a step. And when she did, I'd be like, oh, good girl. She's like, oh, I like that voice. Okay, I guess I did something right. So, and then I would go back to leaving her alone, and we would just continue to do whatever we were doing. So it's really interesting now that I can take her on jogs. And so I have big movements and stuff like that, where before I would try to walk and she'd throw herself up in the air. But it's definitely interesting seeing how I just knew immediately there was no way I was going to be able to push energy. For her, she just would have kicked me and been like, all right, done for the day. I've successfully defeated the human. But now she's eager. She is sticking her head, attempting to stick her head out of the stall and say hello. And yeah, it was different. It definitely wasn't positive reinforcement in the most traditional sense, but it was still the same principles. And there was no way. There was no way of doing anything else. And I was just glad that, everything worked out, that Autumn and Norman had already showed me exactly how to get it done. So that way I could modify it to fit that awkward relationship that Lila and I had for the first 3.5 years.
Yeah, that friction that comes up with the horses that have the aggressive tendency is a weird one.
Yeah.
Sorry, continue.
No, you're good. I think that it's almost like they realize that they're safe here. So there's these like huge explosions that happen, and a lot of like, I'm not sure what's gonna happen because I've done this now.
Yeah.
That I guess to begin with, it weighed really heavy on me because she would explode and
Mm.
then be like, "What now?" And I'd be like, "Nothing." I could see in her face of, "What do you mean, nothing?"
Yeah.
And so it's definitely it's a different one when you have the aggressions
Yeah.
that poke their little head out, because I feel like they expect these huge reactions from us, but leaving them alone to show us, oh, so even when I'm bad, you still like me. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe I just won't do that because we have a lot more fun when I'm not throwing the aggression out there, and you're pretty safe, so I guess it's okay. But it's definitely different because I feel like they throw all these huge things, and then you're just like, okay,
Yeah.
it's different.
Yeah. I think like recognizing that aggressive tendencies come from a place of insecurity, the same way that spooky behavior does, was a big, big breakthrough moment for me. So I was like, oh, okay, like I know how to deal with insecurity. I know how to build a relationship. I know how to build your trust.
Yeah.
But I did start there with the spooky horse as well.
Well, and I think it preps us in an interesting way. I mean, still unexpected when you go from that flip of scared to anger, basically. But I definitely agree. Like, whenever I'm walking into a moment with Norman and I know that's probably going to terrify you, I technically take it the same exact way as I take it with Lila now.
Yeah.
Just, okay, you had that moment and we're moving on with our day. So let's go back to that. Okay, and we're good. Oh, see, it didn't kill you. We're great then.
Yeah.
It's the same things, but it's definitely, I think it's more jarring to us as people because it looks so different.
Yeah.
But at the root, you're right. It's the same. It's the same insecurity. It's just, the fight or flight ends up taking over whatever the natural instinct of that specific horse has. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. The punishment and pressure is a very ineffective tool.
Yeah.
They're quite confident to meet it times 10.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people just see the fact that they've been able, like in traditional horsemanship, I think it's almost like a ruse. The horse is just learning that, okay, well, even though I'm showing that I don't like this, if I give up and just listen, then at least that annoying thing that's happening is going away, or at least that painful thing is going away. So I'll just continue to do that over and over again. And then in my opinion, it sort of develops this like artificial response in the horses, versus where with Autumn, she has all of the spirit that she's ever had. Same with Lila. Norman, he's never really been quote unquote spirited. He's just been a big goofball. But like, Autumn is the type of horse that with her, I can ask her to do anything and she's open, willing, and able to do it. Like just the other day, she was out in pasture, and our grass pasture happens to also be kind of our cross country course. And I just, I had her halter and I just barely hooked my little finger on it and was like, come on, and showed her like we should be trotting, just pointed her how to jump. And she's like, okay, and just went and like jumped 2 jumps. And I think that natural curiosity, like the enjoyment of something, not having to be robotic in it, allows for a much happier horse. Like, I never had that depth of a relationship I've had with these 3 with any of the horses that I rode previously, just because I don't feel like they ever let me 100% in to how they were feeling or what they were going through that day. It was just, as a kid, I'm going to make this happen, and it's going to happen this way because I'm told if the pony doesn't move, you give it a big kick and a crop. Like,
Yeah.
but with them, it's like laying the foundation of trust and having that relationship where they know me so intimately and I know them so intimately. It makes it so much easier after a certain amount of time that you've been able to work with them that it's so much more enjoyable, and that horse is way more excited to do things and way more willing to do things versus the horse that really doesn't enjoy what they're doing, or maybe has been forced for so long to do it that they seem like they do. But yeah, it's a different level of closeness at that point when you can get that horse to the point of being under saddle, working and doing those different things, or even on the ground doing liberty stuff where they're excited and they're more excited than you are some days. And it's just different. It's beautiful, but very different.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one of it's definitely one of mine and now Sarah's like favorite parts of training is, being able to recognize these behaviors as like a coping mechanism kind of gone wrong, like
Yeah.
that they've had an experience and this is how they've managed it. And it kind of like puts a wall up to who they are. Like it becomes who they are because of an event, not who they would be if that event didn't happen. I think like that's a bit of what we unpack when we're working on our emotional baggage when we're working with the horses. But it's definitely like one of my favorite things is that like if you can get through that behavior and understand what it stems from, whether it's insecurity or pain or whatever, you actually get their true nature and their true personality to shine and blossom. Whereas if you take that horse and you kind of just shut down that behavior without addressing it, you kind of shrink that horse's personality, and you drive that wedge in between you and you create that level of disconnect. And when so many horses in the industry are working that way and that's the norm, you don't realize it until you have these horses that are really like, you cannot touch me until we have that relationship.
Yeah, I so agree. And it's not like that, the horses in the traditional field don't necessarily enjoy what they're doing, because there are plenty of horses that you can tell that they love it, but there's just this extra gate that we could have access to that can make it even more enjoyable. Like I remember that even though I say Norman's not necessarily spirited, like he's just more of a goofball now, the quiet timidness, the overthinking that he had, and he still does, like I don't know the full story of what exactly he went through, but I do know that he was on the track, off the track, and was abused and starved while he was off, and then was brought back on. And then obviously had something that prevented him from doing a different project or whatever. Even though I don't know the full story of what happened with him, the gates that are still falling, even to this day, are those like magic morsels that I just hold on to. Because it went from a horse that couldn't look me in the eye, couldn't breathe. Literally, I could just see him holding all of this anxiety in his body. So much to the point where like it was like rings on his feet, and his feet looked awful and they were crumbling. And it was more, not even so much of like nutrition or the way that he was being shod, but like literal discoloration, like sickness coming out of his feet. And my fear is like, I've seen this so many times with horses that are in high pressure situations or have experienced a lot of abuse, it physically manifests itself.
Yeah.
And with Norman, even though it's not the biggest difference, those goofball moments are unimaginable. 4 years ago, that never could have happened. He never could have let down his walls and been like, I'm going to go buck over here in the paddock, Mom. Look at this. And it wouldn't have. And he never would have like come in for big hugs. Like he went from, I couldn't even touch his face while he was standing with me on the other side of a gate, to his favorite thing is putting his head in my chest. And I think a lot of the time people undervalue the thought process of, if I let my horse just be a horse, what could I learn about them? And I think every day, like even now, horses are like, a new barn, we're getting into training. Norman's actually going to go out to pasture until we can get our own facility that suits his needs. But like even now, I don't walk into the barn ever and go, all right, it's training day. This is my to-do list. I go, okay, guys, let's go out to pasture. Let's go run around, have fun, and we'll decide if we want to do anything, after. And because of that thought process, I've got the goofiest kids I've ever met. People are like, wow, your horses have big personalities. I'm like, this is what they're made to be. This is called fun. And don't get me wrong, like my horses definitely have respect boundaries. They know like what makes mom upset and what doesn't. But I find it really important that they know that I have my boundaries and that they have their boundaries and that they're both mutually respected. And that's probably the biggest thing I hear about positive reinforcement. People are like, oh, the horse is so bossy and all they do is like want stuff and you just ignore the bad things. I'm like, I do not. I will physically remove myself from a situation that's more painful to the horses than me doing anything else. Because they're like, where are you going? I want to be with you. So I'm like, not until that attitude changes. And they know instantly. Like if Autumn gets a little too salty and starts bucking a little too close to me because she did something that she's proud of, I have to stand there, remove myself. And then she goes, oh, I'm sorry. Did I do that? You should come back. Can I come into your space now? And we reassess. So it's just, it's awesome to have that mutual relationship that just feels exciting. Like they don't feel like horses to me, they feel like kids. Like I feel like I have these children that are, not only dependent on me, but we have like an authentic communication. So it's cool.
Yeah, I think that's probably a really important thing that a lot of people don't recognize is that when you actually take the time to build the relationship with the horse, you removing yourself or even like worst thing that I could do would be to send the horse away. It is basically, the highest form of punishment to the horses because they are social, they are herd animals and they do strive on social integration. So, having that like, no, you did the wrong thing by just removing yourself from the situation is enough for them to recognize, oh, I need to pull my head in here, like I'm getting too silly. And I think like that is a really effective way for setting boundaries where you don't have to get into the full-blown arguments and fights, and that's when it gets dangerous and the behaviors get out of control. I think it's also really important what you've said there is that the horses need to be able to set their own boundaries. And it's not like, okay, I've got all of these boundaries for how you can behave around me, but I get to force all of my will onto you. It's got to be like, this is my boundary. Where's your boundary?
Yeah.
And if that boundary is like, I actually wanted to do that thing with you, like how are you going to pull that boundary down with them? The only way you're going to pull that boundary down is like by being somebody that they trust and feel safe to allow you past that wall. And then we end up back at the beginning of what do I need to fix in myself?
It's so true because so even just recently, I made the big mistake of allowing someone else to handle Norman. Norman atypically is very like, as long as he has his halter on, he can kind of deal with anybody. But the reaction that he got, it really highlighted to me just how critical that relationship is, specifically for him. Like, I know that I can have, Autumn or Lila go with anybody and they're going to be okay because in the back of their mind, they know that mom's going to be back or this is just temporary. For whatever reason, they're able to like negate my absence and go, okay, like this is okay right now. But with Norman, even though I was still in his presence but wasn't physically handling him, the explosiveness by the time I even got my hands back on him was so bad. He was completely like how we were talking about earlier, the PTSD moment of where he's living in that flashback was so strong. And we were not even on the property, we were out on trail and a bike just had gone right past him. By the time I realized what was going on, he was like completely inconsolable. And it just kind of like knocked me on my bum a little bit. And I realized, wow, the amount of trust that these horses have given me is amazing. And the fact that, like, basically only the person that's developing that relationship can see those boundaries and notice those, like, little cues that a horse is going to say through their body language or, you know, whatever they might be doing. It's like a whole nother world. You start to see horses in a completely different light. And I just remember with all three of them, those different boundaries. I remember, you know, accidentally pushing past those thresholds at the beginning of that relationship and immediately taking 10 steps back and being like, but yesterday this was something that was tolerable, and today this is something that's no longer. And just constantly having to watch for those nuanced moments, making sure that what they're showing me is yes versus me going, this was fine, so it still should be. It's something that ends up really becoming second nature, just like tacking up a horse, taking a horse out of a stall, being able to see those fine lines, whether, because no boundary is a hard boundary, you know, with them. It will never come a day where everything is totally peachy every single time. There are going to be some days where Lila doesn't want to pick up her feet for the farrier or pick them up for me, or Norman might still be afraid of the doorway because I think he had an accident way back on the track that fused a bone to another one. So he's afraid of doorways. Some days he's afraid of doorways, some days he's not. And Autumn doesn't really care about anything at this point. she's used to everything. But I mean, for her, it's way more like emotional boundaries. Is like how much is too much of something during a training session, or if she gets bored. Me respecting the fact that I have currently bored the life out of my horse and I need to do something different. Like it becomes second nature. And I think that anybody that's going through this transition of building a foundation and having a real sincere mutual relationship with their horse, there are going to be days where we think this is a hard boundary, this should be okay. But just recognizing that it's always going to be fluid. It's just like waking up and some joke yesterday was fine, but today it hurts. Like they go through those same emotional responses and regressions and progressions. So just really opening yourself up to realizing those key components of the animal, and then be able to progress, realizing that, you know, if you make it past point A and point B, maybe you don't have to hit point C today, but maybe you can do it next week. I think just finding value in the fact that you got to point A and point B successfully is a win. And I think that mindset shift, as hard as it is, and as long as it could take to get to that next step, it ends up being worth it. Because like I said, with Autumn, I've had her for 5 years. I had her since she was a baby. So we've been able to get through those, you know, A, B, and C moments a lot quicker. That relationship's a lot stronger because she was only mine for so long. It's worth it, considering, like, I've seen the progression with Norman and Lila, but with Autumn, the fact that I could walk her into anything and have complete trust in my horse, who's, you know, 5 and unbroke, but I can crawl underneath her belly and know that she's never going to hurt me, and I can trust her with my niece, and she's still total baby brained and is a total dingus sometimes. Like, it's worth it. It's worth every trial and tribulation. It's worth every step back. It's worth every regression to have a strong foundation and a really clear communication that goes both ways.
Yeah, I think, like, it's really important to recognize that not all horses get a good start to life, and that's where the boundaries and the walls start coming up. And they can get tripped up into, like, wired behaviors really quickly. And then, you know, even more so if they've not found that secure base anywhere and they keep moving from home to home to home, like, you're going to have them unpack on you at some stage. If you if you want them to do as they're told, eventually that emotional response is going to have to unpack, and you are going to have to be the one that rewires it. And if you don't know how to do it because you haven't done it on yourself, then it's a rough journey.
Yeah.
More difficult journey.
Yeah. And I think it's also just so important to notice that it's extremely similar. Working on yourself and working with your horse, it's the same.
Same. Yeah. Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I just love like bouncing off each other. The similar experiences, similar fun ponies to play with. We're gonna have the links to where people can find you in the podcast notes. So you've got your Santuary, which is Hn'H Santuary, and you have the link to the donations on the Instagram page. And people can follow you there. So you've got the website, and for the Purposeful Horse Girl and Hn'H Sanctuary, they'll be in the podcast notes, and we can also follow your journey on Instagram.
Awesome. Well,
Dawn has just jumped in and said totally agree with that last statement.
Good. I'm glad it resonates.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time and having a really big, vulnerable chat with us on your experiences. I'm really looking forward to seeing how your sanctuary comes along.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for having a safe place where people can grow not only with their horses, but also grow themselves as people. I really, really love what you're doing. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, we will talk to you soon.
All right, bye.